and
Yeah.
emails.
Just out of curiosity. No, I think this is correct. That's unfortunate. Out of all the places I speak, they haven't put it on their social media. That was on the guidance calendar.
You should put it, yes. I'm a counselor. Myself. Oh, yeah, John, yes. I see him back there. I am, yes. I see you too. You should. Name? McDermott, yeah.
I'm here to have him advocate for himself.
Oh, yeah, his English teacher. I remember. It's all fixed now, right? Yeah. Of course, that's what I'm here for. Are you ready to get started? All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming down. I know it was super cold out, so we appreciate you braving the cold weather and making it here. So normally, I know that if anyone's been to some of these workshops, Dr. Miller is here doing the introductions, but he was busy today. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Mike Sophia. I'm a counselor here at Sachem North. I see some of my students and their parents made it down. So again, thank you everybody for coming. Today, we have the athletic recruitment seminar that we have going on with Get Recruited with Mr. Wayne Mazzoni. So I'm going to pass the microphone over to him, and he has the floor now. Thank you.
Thank you. So I've done this talk, we're just saying it's probably my 20th talk through the Sachem district. And normally we've run it always at East and never with whatever that thing is called, the streaming thing. So honestly, I'm dead serious when I say this. The fact that those came through the cold here when you could have watched, you're already way ahead in the recruiting process and in the motivation, because listen, you'd probably rather be sleeping, right? Let's be honest. I woke up in Connecticut. I live 2 hours from here. I just said, I got my cup of coffee. I went over to the ferry to hop on the Bridgeport ferry, except they said, no ferry today, too cold. And then I had to haul around. Luckily, no one on the road this morning. So happy to be here. I'm actually from Long Island. I went to Northport High School. Don't slash my tires. Sachem kicked our butts and everything. But I'm really happy to be here. And I have done this talk really since about 2000. And I've probably done it at 300 different high schools, maybe 500-600 times. And it's my first time ever doing it on a Saturday. So what I'm going to do first for I guess anyone was streaming, but you guys as well. I started to do this to make my life easier and everyone else's, and I'll put this number up at the end. But you can see that 678 number there. If you send the word recruiting to that 678 number, this whole PowerPoint will automatically get sent to you. So I used to print copies, and then stacks of paper would get left at the school, and it's kind of a waste. So this makes it easier, and obviously you can still take notes and write things down on your phone if you want, but this whole PowerPoint will get sent out to you. So, yes.
We also have it posted already from the last time on our website, too.
Okay. So he said have it posted from the last, because we did this at East in, I think, November, so it's probably posted there as well. Great. I'm going to give you a little introductory part of this process, and then really I like to break the recruiting process down in 3 major steps that all the student athletes have to go through before you go from whatever grade and what sport you play to ultimately going to be a college athlete. But I like to start with this, and feel free to yell it out. Would anyone like to guess what percentage of high school athletes, not in one particular sport, but in all sports, move on to play at any level of college? Yell it out. 6, 3, 5, and 20, I heard. So it's 7. 7% of high school athletes will play D1, 2, 3, junior college, community college, NAI. Okay, so after you yell out 3, 7 looks pretty big, but that also means to me 93% of high school athletes, their careers end when they graduate. They can play intramurals, they can play club, whatever, but their formal sporting experience is over. So one of the things that I get asked all the time, and actually let's do this first, and hopefully you can see it on the stream and you can see it from where you're sitting. This slide and the next is just put out by the NCAA, and it's participation rates. So if we go to the one at the top, as the last time that they did this, there's 482,000 high school baseball players, 36,000 NCAA baseball players, 7.5 move on to play in college, and then it breaks it down, 2.2% Division I, 2.3% Division II, 2.9% Division III. And then here's the number for the female athletes. So if you could zoom in or squint or get the PowerPoint, you'll see what these numbers are as well. So sometimes it's higher than 7%, sometimes it's lower. And I often get asked this by players, parents, friends, what does someone need to be, to do, to, what makes someone get into 7%? And I don't have it on this list, but I'm going to say it again. Getting up on a Saturday morning when it's freezing out, that should go on the list. I seriously give you guys credit. Number one, you have to be really good. You can't just kind of be good, kind of motivated. You have to be really, really seriously motivated and talented and have the physical speed, size, strength that is required in your sport. So you could be really, really good, but just not big enough, strong enough, fast enough, and you're probably not going to play at the college level. We'll talk more about that. Number two, you need to be a serious student. I'm not saying you need to have a 4.0 and a 35 ACT. I'm saying you need to be serious about your schoolwork because nobody wants to recruit an academic headache. And this is, I think, important to know. There's really one difference why college coaches pick that path over being a high school teacher and coach, which is probably where they were in that fork at the road at some point. And the reason most chose the college route is they get to pick who's on the team. So if you're the lacrosse coach at Sachem, you have the kids for tryouts and either keep everybody or make some cuts and you coach up that team as best as you possibly can. But if you're the lacrosse coach at Fairfield University and you need one 2024 goalie, you might look at 150 to offer the one and get the one. So anyone that's suspect academically, you're just going to bypass them and move on to a better student. Number three, you need to have some understanding of the recruiting process, and I think most people have just enough information to be dangerous. It's like kind of knowing how to do heart surgery. Like, you could have problems. So most people from social media, from friends, from parents, from coaches, you probably know 30-40% of the process. And hopefully today you'll learn a lot more about it and also the steps that it should happen in, not just random information. And then the final thing is, what is, I call your development plan. What is your plan if you're in 10th grade now? Are you going to be the same athlete, have the same skills, the same grades, the same sleep habits, the same nutrition, the same lifting program? If it's working for you now, great. If not, it's incredibly competitive. Incredibly competitive. So you need to have some structure to what you're doing all the time to develop because others are. I go all over the place doing this. I've given talks in Florida, Texas, California, Pennsylvania. Sometimes it's a different world in certain places in certain sports. So what we're going to go through now, I'm going to give you the 1-minute overview of what the whole rest of the talk is going to be about. And the 3 steps are, step number 1 is, what is the right place for me as a student athlete? How do I figure out of all these colleges in the country, what is a good fit for me academically, athletically, and then I say socially, which I'll talk about again in a minute. So how do I start organizing this could be crazy confusing process? So step number 1 is, how do I narrow the list? Number 2 is, when I have a list, which again, the list can change. No one's going to, at the end of this talk, oh yeah, I exactly know the 10 schools I want to attend. But then once you have this list, how do you get the coaches at these colleges to know you're a living, breathing student athlete at Sachem North or East? How do you connect the sides? Because what people don't realize, and I'll talk about when we get there, is the recruiting process for college coaches is absolutely overwhelming. And I already put up a reason why. If you're a baseball coach at Hofstra, there's 3 coaches that are legally allowed to recruit, but there's 482,000 high school baseball players. That's overwhelming. 1 million travel teams, 1 million tournaments, all spread out. It can be really difficult. And then the third part of the process is when you're actually a recruit, you're getting recruited, which I'll identify what that means. Then what are the steps for you to figure out if these schools are recruiting you, which is the right place to go, to make the right choice, to not have to enter the transfer portal, which we should all be knowing what those terms are, but we'll get to them in a little bit. So for me, these slides start off easier and then get more difficult as we go. And the first thing that I want you to do here is you should be looking at colleges as if your athletic part of it will not work out. Let me repeat that. You should be looking at schools as if you break your leg and sophomore year your sport is gone. Do you still love the university? And the reality is I'm only going to give you 2 numbers tonight, and they're or today, see, habit. 2 numbers. One is 7%, I already went over that. The other is 43%. 43% of college freshmen play all 4 years. 57% of kids played softball since age 5, go to college as freshmen. 57% don't make it to senior year playing. Would anyone want to yell out why athletes stop their sport in college? I gave you one: injury. Academics. Not having any fun. Grades are suffering. Need to get an internship. Coach changes. Coach out recruits you. Get a boyfriend, get a girlfriend, get interested in something else. So for you, the point I'm trying to make here is if you say, well, I really don't want to go to Adelphi, which is a great school, but I really don't want to go to Long Island, but the coach really likes me and I'm going to go. If 3 years later you're not playing softball, you'd be like, well, I mismanaged this whole process. So let's talk about a couple of things here. And this is the easiest, as I said, because your school has a great guidance department. There's a lot of research you can do online, Naviance, College Board, to start identifying schools that you want. How far from home do you want to go to school? What size do you want? What are your grades? What are you looking to major in? Do you want to be in a city or rural? I will say this, and actually for student athletes only, this is not parents, the student athletes that are here. Raise your hand if you have visited more than 10 colleges. Nobody. 9, 6, 5. Oh, we got a couple right there at the 5 number. Good. Many times I'm doing these talks, we have a lot of kids who've never been to any colleges, or very many, and yet they're at a talk about the recruiting process. So my advice, as often as possible, if you have a President's Day break, if you have a spring break and you're not involved in a sport, or summertime, or next Thanksgiving, get on college campuses. You're not doing admissions tours, you're not meeting coaches, you're just driving around and looking, do I like this place or not? It's trial and error. And within an hour from here, let's go an hour and a half. Let's have a little fun. Yell out the colleges that could be visited within an hour and a half of where we are right now. Yell it out. Oh my God, wake up everybody, let your coffee kick. Hofstra, Stony Brook, LIU, St. John's, NYU, Columbia, St. Joe's, Farmingdale, Sacred Heart, Fairfield, Quinnipiac, Rutgers, if you drive 90, UConn, Marist, Manhattan, a lot of schools. And the whole idea is the more you visit, it could be a 10-minute visit. It could be, you know what, we're going to go visit Aunt, Sally up in Westchester. Let's pop into Pace. Just drive around, because eventually you'll start to see your likes and dislikes. So for example, let's just take Pace. Let's say all of us here met at Pace and toured it tomorrow. We did a full tour of Pace. And then we did a little evaluation of it. You're going to find a group of people go, this is the best place ever. I absolutely love it. I could commit now because I love the place. People in the middle group would go, not bad. I like it. I can see myself going here, but I want to see more schools. And there'd be another third go, never. I never want to go to Pace. There's nothing wrong or right with your personal opinion, and Pace is great, but we're all different. We all don't like the same food exactly, the same movies, the same music, and same with college. You gotta get out there and visit. And you get the trial and error, and ultimately, you're able to get to a list of schools, 5, 10, 50, 75, that are a good fit for you based on your likes. So if anyone here, and I'm not gonna do it now because we don't have, sometimes when I get someone who's been there 10 or 15, I ask them if they're comfortable saying what they want out of college. Okay, so I'll give you one from a recent talk. They said 3 hours from home, they wanted 5,000 to 10,000 students, engineering major. I didn't even ask grades. I wasn't going to ask the grades in a public setting, right? So just by going 3 hours from home, 3,500 colleges with your sport now becomes about 500 colleges. You want 5,000 to 10,000 students? That shrinks down. You want to major in engineering? That shrinks down. This person wanted to be near a city, but not in a city. That shrinks the list down. And then you can go, what are your grades? And go further and further and further. And again, let me remind you, the list can absolutely change. In 6 months, you could go, oh my God, I was going to do engineering. That's the last thing I want to do. Or, boy, I thought I wanted to go to California, but now it's getting closer to me actually enrolling. I really don't want to go that far. It's fine. But I will say, unless you're one of the best athletes in Long Island, if you don't have a list, you will not play in college. You just won't. The process is flat out too overwhelming. So you need to have some list. So hopefully I've made that point. Where we start getting into the bulk of my expertise is how good are you at your sport? And how do you use that to shrink it down? And I played Division III football and baseball at Gettysburg College, a nice little small school in Pennsylvania. And my dad still thinks 30 years later for me graduating high school that I got totally screwed and I should have went to Notre Dame on a full ride with 2 sports, right? So parents are the worst judges of athletic talent for 2 reasons. We love our kids, but we don't have a global perspective. We're not looking at the recruits all over the country like most people. I even had this conversation with a kid on the phone yesterday, this kid that I'm trying to help with recruiting. And he said, well, what do you think about one of the Ivies? And I said, do this. Go to the roster at the Ivies and read off in your sport where the kids are from. 1 New Yorker, 1 Connecticut, the rest completely out of the area. So I'm not saying that anyone can or can't go to the Ivies, but when you are at Yale and you go to Texas or California to recruit and you say the name Yale, have they heard of you? Yes, everyone's heard of Yale and Harvard and Princeton. Whereas you could be at a good school, let's just take Hofstra. You go to Texas and say Hofstra, they have no idea what you're talking about. So the Ivies carry a lot of weight, okay? So you just don't see what the competition is, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So what I'm trying to help you do here, maybe you've done some of this, is how do you figure out how good you are? Are you a high-level Division I scholarship player, lower-level Division I, Division II, Division III, or like 93% of high school athletes, Division IV? And there is no Division IV. So you need to figure this out, because if you don't and just go, yeah, I'm Division I, I can play at Clemson, North Carolina, Duke, no problem. But you're really a Division III player and would have a great fit there. And then the schools that are showing you interest in Division III, you're like, nah, that's not for me, I'm going here. And then a year later, you realize Clemson, Duke, North Carolina have no interest, and you go back to those other schools, they've already passed you by. So the more you can do, and you're not going to nail it exactly, but to try to narrow it down. So number one, you got to ask your high school coach, travel coach, lesson coach, depending on the sport, someone that's with you all the time. Some of your coaches have known you a year, 2 years, 3 years. They know your goods, your bads, your intangibles, your sports IQ. They're your first line that I would absolutely go to. And I don't think it's your high school coach's job in any way to get you recruited. It's not in a job description. They have busy lives. I do think you should expect 2 things from a high school coach. And one is a realistic evaluation. So we have our lacrosse coach here. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but if a junior came to him and said, Coach, you know, I'm really interested in playing in college. What do you think is the right level for me? He should steer him in the right direction, right? And if the kid says, well, I just want to play at Stanford and etc., he might say, listen, we got to scale that down because that's really competitive, and here's schools that I think make a fit for you. And then any coach that's around you on a regular basis, Any friends that you know from Sachem, from a travel team, that they're playing in college, maybe they're freshmen or sophomores now, you've played with them, you know their talent level, they know yours. I would have a conversation. How are they fitting in at that next level? And how do they see you if you were at that same school? It's huge to do that. So I recruited as a college coach for 30 years. I've had kids from Sachem. Actually, basically got a commitment from a kid, Rob Griffith, from Sachem North, one of the best players when I was coaching at Sacred Heart. Tremendous. But for example, when he was on the team that I was coaching him, and someone from the Sachem East or North wrote me and said, hey, I'm playing blah, 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 I'd say, Griff, this kid any good? And if he says, no, he's not that good, or whatever, he's a jerk, or he said, oh, no, this kid's really good, we go with that. Kids, you see what we see, okay? So ask somebody that you know that's now at the next level. The camps and showcases, we'll talk about on the next part of this process, but there's two awesome things you get when you go to one of these camps or showcase events that help you figure out how good you are. The first is, a lot of them evaluate. They actually have in the description of this camp, you will leave this 3-day field hockey camp with an evaluation by a college coach, which will say what level they think is right for you. Excuse me. So you get an evaluation, maybe the first time you've ever gotten that. So that's one thing you can get out of those camps. Number two is, it may also be the first time you've gone out of your little world to a bigger thing. So you go up to the Boston College volleyball camp. There's 230 girls there for 3 days in the summer. Pretty quickly, you can look around and go, man, I think I'm one of the best girls at this camp. You're a Division I scholarship volleyball player. If you go to that camp and after 3 days, you're like, oh my God, if they ranked us, I'm girl 229. Like that one girl she couldn't tire. She was on, I definitely am better than her. Everyone else blows me away. You're not a college level player. And without stressing people out, and I certainly do these talks to reduce stress, because I think the unknown is stressful. And I think this recruiting process really can be stressful. But I would absolutely take an 8th grader, 9th grader, and send them to a camp. Not saying to start the recruiting process, but would you rather find out your setting skills and your spiking, something's not right, would you rather find out going into your senior year or going into 9th grade? The earlier, the better. So you now have a chance to work on it and to develop. And I'll put this up on the screen right here. I've seen many kids in my recruiting life in 9th grade, had notes on them, didn't think much, they were too young, they hadn't grown yet, whatever the case is, or their skills weren't good. I've seen them a year and a half later and offered them. So, and you don't hurt yourself by not being ready to go to one of these things. Someone doesn't like you, and they eventually do. It's kind of goofy, but imagine when you first met your spouse, you just weren't that interested for whatever reason. You meet him a year later, you fall in love. Do you go when you met him a year later and, oh, this is a wonderful person, but yeah, I met them a year ago, I didn't like them then. How could I like them now? Of course you could, right? So again, I'm not trying to rush anyone on this. I'm really not. But I have my own kids that went through this, and as early as possible, I tried to get, what does someone else who does this for a living think of them instead of me as a dad? Watch the colleges. My God, there's nothing better you can do than to go watch Division I, II, and III practices or games of your sport, and it could be, so if you might say to me, well, I want to go to Virginia, North Carolina area, why do I want to watch Adelphi play tennis? Because Division II tennis is pretty much the same wherever you go. So even if you don't want to go to school up here, to watch what that Division II tennis program looks like is really helpful. Not a lot of things make it to TV. There's more now, more things are streaming. But I think we all know everything in sports looks a lot easier on TV. Everything looks a lot easier. Like, I think watching the TV, I possibly can start for the Jets, which is possible that I might be able to. But you just don't see it. It's just a completely different thing when you're there in person. So I highly advise you, when you can, to go watch some. You could pop in to watch a practice, go watch a game, and get an idea of where you stand. Because I've found this is going to be, I have to put that down for this. This is not Sachem, this is the world that does this. They go, well, here's my high school level of athletics. Division 3 is like 13th grade. That's a piece of cake. I'll play there, no problem. Division 2 here, and then, the big boys and girls of Division 1. It's completely wrong. I'm just telling you it's wrong from a lifetime of doing it. It's high school, Division 3 to 1. It's a massive leap from high school to play any level of college. And is there any adult before me that played Division 3 sports in college here? Yes? Okay, so let's just start. So when you were in college at Binghamton, it was Division 3. Was it like a joke of a sport, like the coach wouldn't show up, everybody's wearing different stuff, or was it like crazy intense? Crazy intense, right? So I went this fall, as a great reminder for me, 2 kids that I know play football in the NESCAC. One's at Trinity, one's at Colby. They were playing a game in September, beautiful day, tailgating with friends. All of a sudden, both teams walk out from the locker room past us. It was the NFL. It was the biggest. There were Coke machines with feet and helmet walking out of the locker room, like massive human beings. And that's Division 3 football. Okay, so again, please, 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 I'm not here to tell you should go Division 3, you're all not good enough. I'm just saying, open your mind to it because you're probably not aware of how good that it really is. Your individual sport athletes, figuring out your talent level as it pertains to college is a lot easier. You have a 200-meter time, you have a golf handicap, you have distance, right? You have a mile time, you have a sprint time. You have something that you can say, unless you just don't think you've hit your maturity or you've gotten the right coaching. If you play golf and you have a 10 handicap, you're Division 3. That's it. If you're 5 handicap, you're Division 2. If you're 1 or 2 handicap, you're Division 1. And if you want to play at the top 10 golf programs in the United States, you better be a plus golfer. If you don't play golf, that meant nothing to you. But the point being, you can take that. Whereas you could say, I am on the softball team at Sachem. I've been on varsity since 10th grade. I'm the starting shortstop. I only made 2 errors last year and I hit .420. And I can tell you this now, no one cares. No one cares. Why? Why doesn't a college coach care about team sports stats? What's that? You got it right. It doesn't tell the competition. So maybe you had a 4-game stretch where you played teams with pitchers that have no chance of playing in college, and you had an unbelievable, at-bats and got all these hits. And then on game 5, you play a girl at Lindenhurst throwing 68 underhand, and you go 0 for 4, look terrible. But your overall average for 5 games looks fantastic. And maybe you only got 2 errors because you couldn't have the range to get to other plays where you had a potential to make the error. So we'll talk about next what coaches are evaluating. But doing a profile or a ridiculous recruiting service where if you want to spend your money on any recruiting service, which we'll get to on the next thing, my advice is drive around the area, look for someone really cold that uses them and just give them the money that you were going to give to the recruiting service because it's a complete waste of your money. And they're down in their luck and it'll go much further that way. So again, the goal is, back to this other person I said, 3 hours from home, 5 to 10,000 students, engineering major, outside of a city. And now this person was a lacrosse player. They're like, I probably am a Division 2 level lacrosse player. Still want to look at some Division 1s, certainly the Division 2s that fit, and then some of the better Division 3s. And that could be 3 schools, 5, 8, 10, 15, doesn't matter. But it's a list that actually fits you in every capacity. And again, always subject to change based on your development, maturity, hitting the weight room, whatever the case is. Okay, so I didn't say this in the beginning. I certainly will do questions at the end. And when it's over, I'll certainly, anyone that wants to talk one-on-one, happy to do that. And I also will give out my email and my cell phone. If you, today, in a year, you have a question, it doesn't have to get everything covered right now. But before I move to the next piece of this, does anyone have a question? Was there anything maybe I didn't explain right that's driving you nuts in your head and you need to know? Yes? So that was sort of what I referenced. There's 168 hours in a week. For all my years of coaching on Sunday night, I made my players let me know what their plan was for the next 168 hours. So here's my studying, here's my sleep, here's this, here's that, here's my development stuff. So my point being, you could be a ninth grader at Sachem now, be what someone thinks has no shot to play at any level of college, and 2 years later, be a full scholarship player. I mean, the greatest story we see stories all the time. Tom Brady, 6th round pick, greatest player of all time. Michael Jordan didn't make his varsity team in his junior year. Like, you never know. If the heart's there, you can't measure heart. Cannot measure heart. So you could change, your level could change, and some people are late bloomers. Okay, thank you for asking that. All right, so we get here to the next phase of this talk, step 2. Step 2 is you've got a list of schools. You've got whatever number of places. How do you go about having this coach have any idea about you at all? Academically, athletically, how do you bridge that gap? And again, I talked about that it's overwhelming for the college coaches as well. And I really mean this. This to me is the most important thing of the talk. If I teach you what to do to actually get a no. So if Villanova says, hey, listen, it was great getting to know you, seeing and doing the following, and we just don't think you're good enough for Villanova. We don't need your position. We've already, recruited your position. Or academically, we just don't think it's going to work here. You should hug the next 10 people you see. You should come into school the next day giving out like candy. You should be thrilled, because eventually getting no's means you're in the game. You're doing the right things to get a no, and then eventually you get a couple of yeses. And you don't need 40 schools to love you. You got a list of 15 schools, and 3 or 4 show you interest and start recruiting you. That's huge, massive. And I always give this stupid example, but I actually think it makes sense. Which person is closer to being an actor for a career? The person that has no agent, no headshot, and never gets any interview or audition for a part ever, but wants to be an actor. They don't ever hear a no because they don't get as far as hearing a no. Or the other person that has an agent, headshots, etc., goes to auditions all the time, and people just say, man, that was really good, you're just not right for this part. Who's closer to being an actor? The one getting a bunch of no's, because then you only need that one yes. And I'll say this, I should put this up on the screen. I really I think I need to do this now. Out of the 93% that don't play sports in college, I'm going to go with, and I'm going with a gut for years of coaching, and the books that I've written, I interview coaches and find out how everyone recruits, because I don't want to just present my version of recruiting. I'd say out of those 93%, 80 of them never even have one interaction with a college coach. So most people never get this far because they don't know what to do, or they don't do it the right way with the combination of things. So let's get to it. It's really doing all 3 of these things. One is, the ultimate is, of course, getting seen playing live, which isn't as simple as it sounds because there's conflicts. Your high school season is the college coach's season. In the summertime, when you might be playing travel and they have no one on campus, there's a million events and tournaments and teams and limited coaches with budget restrictions and all kinds of rules that they have to follow. So there's specific things that you can do to get seen live, which I'll get to. How many of you have video? 1, 2, 3, 4. You need video. You don't have to get Spielberg to shoot and direct and edit and all that. You just, like an iPhone, 2 minutes of a practice. Half of a game, maybe the school. You need something, especially if the school's not in your area. Right? If you want to play at Emory in Atlanta, Emory is probably never at any sport on Long Island to recruit. Okay? So you need some video. Now, this is why I do say it's a combination of things, and let me put this up here. Many coaches that I've talked to, they won't watch one video. None. They're not watching any, because they're realizing it's a waste of time to keep watching all the videos with players that can't play at their level. And then you have other programs where they have a 21-year-old graduate assistant who just goes on Twitter all day long and looks for players. So everyone does it a little bit differently, but you need to be accumulating video in some capacity. Because maybe a coach sees you live and asks for video, or maybe the third thing, which we'll cover now, a reference. I can't emphasize this enough, especially since COVID, it's kind of changed the way people recruited. Word of mouth from a trusted source is everything. You could write an email and have your dad do it and your uncle do it and all day long and reach out to a college coach. They're probably not really going to respond. Because do you think any kid writes a college coach and says, listen, I'm pretty lazy. I don't really like to work out much. Class, not really into that. But listen, I want to play for you. No, they say I'm the greatest, I'm the best. And it's hard to verify. But when someone, your high school coach, your travel coach, an alum, a scout, somebody that can verify your talent, I can promise you this, you will get evaluated every single time. So when someone says, so if a coach calls about one of the lacrosse players to Susquehanna University in Pennsylvania, says, hey, listen, played in high school, played in college, coaching now in high school. I have a kid that I've done, worked with for 2 years, really good kid, really is a good fit for your program. That coach is going to evaluate him. Not to say that coach will recruit the player, okay? So this is, again, back to what I said before, what the role is of the high school coach. It's not to meet with you 2 hours a week to talk out your recruiting process. Number one, it's to give you an honest evaluation. And then number two, when the time is right, you have a list of your top 3 schools. Provided they agree on the school that you can play at that level, the coach should make a call for you at that school. That should be expected. And you're not asking them hours and hours and hours of work. You're asking them specific tasks. Can you do this? And I haven't had, under those circumstances, a high school coach not do it unless, again, the kid wants to play at Texas and he's not good enough to play at Texas and the coach won't do it. So your reference might be what gets your video watched. Your reference might be that the coach decides to watch you at a game or a tournament. Almost all of you in all the sports play a lot of times in a travel program where there's a tournament or an event. Now maybe it's soccer and it's a 3-day event and there's 14 fields. No coach will go, oh, let's see, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm going to leave the family for 3 days. I'm going to go to this event. I'm just going to look around and see who's good. Never will happen. They will say, I got to see this girl at 8 o'clock on field 4. I've heard about her. I'm going to go see her. And then at the 12 o'clock game, I got to go see this girl. They're going specifically to follow up on people that they've heard about. Now, while they're there watching this one girl, if that girl really stands out, you betcha they're going to follow up. But there's too much going on to just randomly recruit. Okay? So it's a combination of a lot of these things. Now, I want to talk about this. I really, really believe this is very important. The number one thing, once you have a list of schools, you ultimately should go to that school's direct recruiting camp. Almost every school and every sport has their own prospect camp. Now, everyone says, well, the camps are just for money. Some of them are. Some of the big camps that are run by a Nike ID camp, and they have 20 college coaches and 200 kids. Well, certainly some recruiting is happening, but that's someone's running a business. But when Bucknell University runs their soccer prospect camp, it's basically straight up to recruit. College coaches, this is important, can't do tryouts. You can't just say, hey, listen, come on down from Sachem, come into practice on Tuesday, we'll throw you in with a bunch of guys on the team, we'll see if you're good enough, we'll let you know then. It's not allowed. So that's why camps are allowed. Most of those camps on a college campus are way cheaper. So some camps I've seen $600 to $1,000, $1,500. A typical camp at a college, $90, $95, right? So here's what also you get. So if you go to the Bucknell soccer camp, you get to see the field. You get a tour of the school. You get to meet the entire coaching staff. This is important. On any given day, head coaches in Jersey, assistant coaches in Pennsylvania, another assistant coaches in Maryland, watching games, texting each other. Hey, I saw this center back. At the camp, All the coaches are there together, watching all the players in a workout that they design, and then watch the game. So I think it would be fair to say, because I've talked to a lot of coaches, probably a third of college rosters, sorry that was loud, a third of college rosters come directly from their own camps. And it does one other thing again that you don't really think about because you're not in the profession of recruiting. But what happens to college coaches a lot is they'll go find a kid. So for example, on that I gave before, I'm here at this game at the 8 o'clock game to watch girl play defense on this team, number 4. And then all of a sudden I go, wow, that forward over there, she's really good. You get that kid's number from the coach. You call her up and say, I'm so-and-so from this school. And the girl says, oh, I really appreciate the call, but I'm looking for such and such. You don't fit what I'm looking for. Coaches get rejected 70% of the time. So if a kid, though, signs up for their college prospect camp, what does it tell the coach? They're interested in the school. We've bypassed that whole piece. And then there's a final cool part of this whole thing. I really believe this. The kids get to meet players on the team. So at all of these camps, they usually have 3 or 4 or 5 players working the event. They're going to run drills, etc. You get to talk to those players. Are you happy? Do you like the coach? How's the academics here? If you could do your process over again, would you come here? It's a great, great experience. And on a side note, you're slightly being interviewed too. So for example, if I know that one of the players that I had run your station of 5 kids, at the end of that, I'll say, hey, 17's really good. We like 17. What did you think of it? Man, that kid really likes himself, coach. I don't know. Or he might say, oh my God, what an awesome kid. Like, we got to get that kid. That's the players. It's their brothers, their sisters, right? So it's a family. Do they want you in the family? Because they get picked too. What else did I have on this thing? So it is just so we know, it's a combination of all these things. And I've seen people do this. Well, I heard Susie got recruited at the August camp for this place, so that's our recruiting plan. Okay, well, maybe you're at the camp, you don't play well. Maybe you're on field 12, the coach you want to see you is assigned over here. You got to be doing a lot of stuff. You got to have people reach out for you. You got to have some video. You got to strategically go to the right events and try to get feedback from all the work that you do. You shouldn't just be going to a camp at Villanova and then not hearing what the Villanova coach thinks about it. We good?
We have cross practice.
All right. That's fine. Listen, I give you boys credit for coming already. It's awesome. Yep, you got it. Okay. This is kind of the last part of this, and I'm sure we'll have some questions on this before we get to really the next section of this, but it might be the number one thing I get asked. When is the right time to really start the recruiting process? Again, I said in the last part, the earlier you can get evaluated, the better off you know where you stand and you can work on things. But when does the recruiting process happen for most? I think it's a pretty typical answer I could give you with a variety of different outliers, if you will. Most kids at some point in their junior year are going to start hearing from a college coach, if not the summer between junior and senior year. So if you end your junior year and you have no interest from anyone, you probably have no shot in any sport unless it's football. And the reason football still has an opportunity is there's not travel football teams. It's a whole different world. You have your high school video is everything. So I don't know if there's any football players here, but Huddle is everything. So all the games are recorded. The kids get to pick their highlights, send them out to college coaches. The world of video and football is everything. So you could go from an unrecruited, have 4 unbelievable games in September and October, send that video to places, and get offered within 4 weeks. Whereas the other sports, field hockey, soccer, they're basically saying, the coaches are saying, well, we had all time to see you. All summer we were on the road seeing you and we didn't connect. It's probably not going to happen in the fall of your senior year. So typically junior year or in the summer. There are a million ways, and this is maybe the easiest way for me to say it. The bigger the program, the earlier they recruit. So hopefully everyone's familiar with this term. If not, is the Power 5 conferences. So there's a bunch of Division I conferences, but you have the ACC, the SEC, Big 10, Big 12. The Power conferences with prestige, etc., recruit really early. So I would venture to guess every sport at those schools has already committed 26s. Absolutely, no question about it. Committed 20. Doesn't mean they're done with the 26 class. I would say 98% of them are done with the 24 class, working on 25s and still recruiting 26s. So all of a sudden you go, hold on, you said junior year, there's even recruiting rules that say that coaches aren't allowed to initiate the recruiting process till September 1 of your junior year, yet a freshman is committing to a school. How does that happen? It happens through camps, and it happens where if the kid is ready for it, an intermediary, meaning his travel coach or his high school coach, can have the kid initiate a phone call to the college coach to start the process. They don't want it the other way, because what if there's a high school basketball player at Sachem who is a freshman, who's 6'10", who is incredible, who just goes, man, I want to have a year and I want to play basketball and be friends, and I'm not looking at doing these recruiting stuff yet. If there was no recruiting rules, college coaches would be in RVs parked out front every day. They would give him free gear. They would buy a house for his family. It would be insane is what would happen, right? And we're seeing a little bit of insanity now, though, with something that has 3 letters in it, NIL. So NIL money is name, image, and likeness, which won't affect 98% of the recruits coming in. But in big-time football and basketball, which is basically revenue-producing pros, they're making deals with kids that say, you come to this university, if you commit to Texas football, not only will we offer you a scholarship, which covers tuition, room, board, and books, but you'll get $50,000 a year to be on the team. Yep. And when you become a starter, that'll triple to $150. It's fact. Okay. But that doesn't apply to most kids at most places, but it is out there, and it's something to know. So, all right, before we move off of this, I'm sure we have a couple of questions. Anyone have any question on what I covered here, which was a lot? Yes. Yeah, let me say this before I. Yes. Yeah, she said, if you couldn't hear that, she was told by coaches, wait till senior year. Yeah. Totally late. Yes, totally late. Yeah. I mean, is he a senior? We were talking about a senior. So we're talking about a senior in February that's graduating in June? Right, and is not talking to college coaches at all? Or is? What's that term, something or get off the pot? It's time to get moving. Like I would say to these coaches, anyone where there's any communication, we need to settle this by next week. You want me or not? End of story done. Now, if there is conversations happening, it's different. What I was saying is if you're sitting here in February going, man, I wonder when Lafayette is going to give me a buzz. I know they want me. They're not going to call you. If you're having conversations already, it's a different story. Yeah. The only thing I could say, and not knowing your personal situation, is it sounds like that was a rejection. Hey, call us back such and such a time. That to me sounds like a nice way to say no. But I don't know a thing about you or your kid. So you know what we're going to do? And I actually want to answer her question, but I'm going to say something that's going to affect you as soon as I turn this slide over. Yes. A total waste. It's a huge business. I think they all stink. This is where I would say, and that the reason I left the 1% open. So let's take Coach right here, okay? So let's say Coach, he does 30 years as a counselor and a coach at Sachem. And in the mid-50s, he goes, I'm out. Like, I had enough. But you know what? He still wants to keep his hands in with lacrosse, and he's going to pick 10 players he's going to help with the recruiting process. I'd hire him right away, because that's a one-on-one personal thing. It's not some random company that you never meet the people that just have some database. I mean, I could give you names: College Prospects of America, Sports Recruits, NCSA is the worst of them all. Save the money. Yeah. Yes, right. Right. They threw a little thing out there trying to reel you in. Yeah, it's a business. It's like the Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, there's, you know, so my suggestion, if you have a question about any of these places, say, hey, can I talk to some people that have used the service so I can just find out if they like it or not? I mean, that's why there are reviews on Airbnb, VRBO, and everything else in Yelp to find out if something is worth it. All right, so back that I wanted to say something here, and this starts talking a little bit about the NCAA eligibility, but I like to preface this with that this slide and the remaining slides all is under the premise now that you're being recruited. Okay, and I want to define what being recruited is. If you're getting emailed, you're not being recruited. If you get something in the mail, you're not being recruited. You are being recruited when the coach calls you on the phone and usually sets up a weekly time. Hey, can we talk every Tuesday at 7:30? They text you. They come to visit you at the high school. They visit you at your house. They see you after a game. They invite you up to campus. If you go, I wonder if Purdue is recruiting me. They're not. There'll be no mistaking when you're being recruited. So it's important to understand. But when you are being recruited, you have a set of things to go through. And this is the first one here. And I'm going to give you the overview on it. And then there's like a sliding scale that pops up that kind of makes some sense to it. So there's Division 1, 2, and 3, and they all have different rules. Division 1, when you graduate high school, they want to know your GPA. The NCAA needs to know your GPA in the 16 core courses from the high school that start in 9th grade and go through senior year. English, math, social studies, and science. So the admissions cares about your overall transcript. The NCAA cares about your 16 core courses. In those 16 core courses, you could be no lower than a 2.3. If you have a 2.3, you need a 980 math and verbal SAT or a 76 ACT composite, which I'll show you in a second there. Conversely, if you have a 3.5 or better in those 16 core courses, you can be as low as a 400 and a 37 ACT composite. And it's a big sliding scale, which when I press the button again, it's going to come up on the screen. Division 2 is different. You need a 16 core courses. You need a minimum of a 2.0 and an 820. There isn't a sliding scale. And in Division 3, there is not this eligibility. However, this is something I think really worth noting here. Is this a pointer? Yeah, there we go. That's not the sharpest, but so in Division 1 and 2, if you are going to play Division 1 or 2 sports, you go to this NCAA website and you create an account, and they charge you $90, and there's a long forms you have to go through. They ask a lot of information. You hit submit, the high school gets notified, and the high school sends in transcripts, and then when you take SATs or ACTs, the College Board will send those in. And then College Coach will ask you, and you'll know it's another part of the recruiting process, hey, what's your NCAA ID number? Because a coach can go in, put in your ID number, and see all your coursework, which is really neat. For Division 3 athletes, or you're not sure you want to play in college, they really want you to do the whole same thing, but you don't pay any money. So you just create this profile, and then if you play Division 3 or don't play, nothing further has to happen. But what they found was previously they wouldn't have you do anything. Division 3 or undecided, nothing to do. And then maybe a Division 1 or 2 school would come along and ask for your information, and you're like, I haven't done that yet. And then you'd go in and register, and it would take 2 months to get through the system, and a coach would say, forget it, we're moving on. We can't wait 2 months to see what your grades are, right? So what they do now is they ask you to do this profile. It doesn't cost anything. If a Division I or II school does show interest, you can literally go in, put your credit card information, and you're in for the next day. So what this is, to make sure we're understanding it, it's the NCAA's way of saying academics matter, and you need to have done your work in high school to be able to play as a college freshman. You can't be a great athlete and go blow off your schoolwork, and because you're good at sports, you immediately get to play. Okay? And here's the sliding scale. It's probably going to be really difficult to see, but you see on the top left, again, it's for Division I, 3.55 or above, and then that's the corresponding SAT and ACT. And then it just keeps going down, and then it goes over to this side. So 2.3 is the lowest you could have. If you're at a 2.299, that little pinkish area there, it says academic redshirt. That means in Division I, if you have a 2.29 or below, you still have to meet a corresponding SAT or ACT score. You can practice with the team your freshman year, but you cannot play in any games. And then you would have to take 24 credits, get a minimum of a 2.0, and then you can play sophomore, junior, senior, in either fifth year, senior, or graduate year. You don't lose any eligibility, you just can't start playing right away. So I'm going to move off this, but it's important, and typically, and I didn't say this, I should have, this is typically a junior year activity. If you're a senior now and you haven't done it, do it. And if you're in the junior year, typically most high schools want you to do it in the junior year. I don't know if you know enough to know how this school wants to do with the clearinghouse or not, but junior year sound right?
Yeah, we've done both. People are still doing it. So it's not too late.
Yeah, I would say this, again, I'm a little crazy with this stuff. If my child is a 9th or 10th grader, and I know they want to play at one of these levels, I fill it out now. And the reason I would do that is 95%, I go further, 98% of the kids walk through that process with no problem. Every once in a while you find out, oh, they didn't take the right math class. They did this. To have a little lead time to be able to see where they're trending, I think is better. So you can give more time to course correct. I think junior year is probably the right time, and it's not like you can't still get eligible, of course, if you do it as a senior. But I'm like, me personally, I'm type A, triple, like I'm early, I do everything. That's just how I am. Doesn't mean it's right. Can you say it louder? No. This is the NCAA itself. This is not a recruiting service at all. Oh, awesome. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, her point was, it still holds true. A college coach wants to hear from you or your coach or something, or see video. They don't want to hear from XYZ recruiting company on your behalf. Exactly. It's like, yeah, you go, I'll pay you, and I'll go play Donkey Kong, and you're going to get me recruited. Is Donkey Kong still a thing? I just really showed how old. Sorry. All right. This slide right here is a lot of writing, but it's really meant to be simple and understandable, which is this. When you are being recruited, generally it's by more than one school. Something you've done has gotten 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 schools interested, and now you're getting calls and you're getting visits and you're getting overwhelmed. It's exciting, but it's overwhelming because eventually you know you have to pick one of them. So part of this stuff is what coaches do. They explain, here's what we do for our athletes and student athletes, and here's the academic piece and the strength and conditioning, and that's what recruiting is telling you what they have to offer. But sometimes they don't tell you everything. Sometimes they specifically leave things out because it's not a good thing for them and they're trying to work around it. So I put things into this part bucket, if you will. Number one, you should be asking the coach, especially if he or she is not telling you, how do we manage athletics and academics? Is there study hall? Is there tutors? If I'm on athletic or academic money, what do my grades have to be to keep the money? Is there some place my grades go down that I lose that money? Do athletes get to pick classes before other students so that they can pick according to their practice or game schedule? So basically, what is in store at this university to keep my son or daughter on track to graduate in 4 years? Because ultimately, even though we love our sport, we want to get a degree, get an education, and get a job after that, right? So academics is a big piece. Number two, what are the coaches really like? You know, I had a coach, I was at a recent event, and a coach said something I'm going to use all the time now. He said, there's golf cart me and regular coach me. And golf cart me meant that's the time I've got the player and his parents in the golf cart. We're driving around campus and I'm on my best behavior and I'm nice and, hey, can I get you anything? And then when you come in here, I'm my regular coach, which means I'm getting on you if I have to. But he tells them that up front, which I like. Sometimes, though, people fall in love with the recruiting aspect and they don't realize what the coach is really like because they didn't ask. They didn't ask players in the team, parents. They didn't watch a practice or a game, and they have no idea. So you really need to do your homework on the coaches. And in addition, I always say, why are they recruiting you? What's your possible career going to be like? How many other girls in your recruiting class are being recruited? How many other kids in the team play your position? Are you going to play as a freshman? Are you going to be redshirted? Are they going to switch your position? These are things that you should ask before you just go, oh, this coach just seems awesome calling it. And then all of a sudden you get there as a freshman and you look around and you're like, there's 9 goalies, like there's 1 net, but there's 9 of us. I mean, and this shocked me too, and maybe this was partially COVID related. So Sacred Heart University, it's that FCS football, used to be called 1AA. So not major power football, but still really good. And the team would be practicing and I'd be jogging, doing a workout outside on the track. And you wear a green shirt if you're a quarterback. There were 12 green shirts. So there's 12 quarterbacks in the program. One's starting, one's a backup, a couple are developing, others will never ever see the field. So I'm curious, never of course asked them, would you guys have done it again and not been the backup here and gone to a Division III where you'd start? Be curious to know what they think. So you should ask that. And then so many things that I worked at 6 colleges, so I've seen the differences in how they travel. Some teams travel on a chartered plane when they go to away games. Some have a nice bus with Wi-Fi. Kids, some travel on a sleeper bus, so kids can actually sleep if they're traveling a lot. Some they pack them in vans. Some the kids drive themselves. I've seen places with an unbelievable strength and conditioning program with a strength and conditioning coach just for that sport in a designated weight room. And then I've seen other schools, there is no strength and conditioning coach, and the athletes do captain's workouts around professors and other students, right? You got to know the concussion policy, the drug testing policy. Are they going to redshirt you? Meaning, they just think you're not ready to play as a freshman and then you're going to be there for 5 years and, at a very expensive price, who's paying for that 5th year, right? So there's a lot of things. Equipment. What gear do you get? Do you have to fundraise for anything? Do they make trips and you're expected to write a check? So, and asking is not rude. Asking shows your interest. If a coach tells you about the program and then says, do you have any questions? And you're like, you're not showing interest. If you say, hey, coach, what do you do with your attackmen on drills and face? Wow, this kid's we're conversing. This is a kid that I want in the program, right? So same in the world of work for adults. If you've ever had a job interview, they ask you questions and you answer. And at the end, they say, do you have any questions? And you should have a couple of questions, right? So it's important. It shows your interest. It's not rude to ask these questions. And this is, unfortunately, what you need to see. And this is a lot of scribble for me to get to one thing here. You can't see it, so I'll point it out. This arrow goes to this number, which is 29,547. What the heck is that? That is the last time I logged into the NCAA transfer portal. So there's 30,000 kids in college sports that want to leave where they're at. Wow. Now, some of them are for good reasons. Maybe they were at a Division III school, they have a COVID year left, their school has no graduate program, so if they want to play, they need to leave. You need to enter the transfer portal. But the majority of them are disgruntled in some way, not playing, whatever the reason is, and they want to leave. And I'm going to go over this, maybe in a couple of years I won't have to. Everyone will know what the transfer portal is, but I think a lot of people don't know now. When the NCAA started, you could always transfer. But the previous rule was you had to sit 1 year in residence, meaning you played tennis at Mississippi State, but you now want to go to Ole Miss, you could transfer, no problem. 1 year you can't play tennis. When the transfer portal really became popular, all this transfer portal is a database, but they waived the rule. Now you can leave and play immediately. So that meant kids going, oh man, I didn't want to leave here because I got to wait a year. I'm not going to do that. Now that you see kids moving all over the place. And the reason I bring it up at this slide is many of them didn't really investigate what was going on at that school. They just go, oh my God, this coach sounds great. Yeah, I'll go. And then they're unhappy. So do your research, ask the tough questions earlier, talk to kids in the team, especially again, when you're down to 3 schools and you're like, oh my God, I don't know, they all seem great. Ask questions to find out what life is really like in all aspects to help you make the best decision. Okay, let's keep on rolling. I'm going to put all this on the screen here. But this really switches to admissions. We really have 2.5 topics left, and one is getting into the school. How does student athletes manage the admissions process as it compares to a regular student? And it's the easiest way. I'm just going to talk you through the way every college coach goes through this. So when you find an athlete you like, so you find a kid at Sachem North you like, the first thing every college coach will do is the same. They ask for your transcript. So all of you should have an unofficial copy of your transcript on your phone. Have to. Because if a college coach says, hey, can I get a copy of your transcript, and you fumble, like, oh, I got to talk to my counselor, what does that tell the college coach? Not only are you not prepared, you must be the first person that asked. So hold on, am I seeing something wrong that I'm the first person to ask this kid about transcript? Whereas many kids, hey, can I get your transcript? It goes through, delivered, the transcript comes immediately back. And you know what the college coaches think? I'm on the right. This kid's being recruited. I'm not the first person to ask for this, okay? But when you get that transcript, you fill out what universities call a pre-read sheet. And on that sheet, it has your name and your address and your date of birth. Are you a scholarship candidate, a preferred walk-on candidate? When are you entering? What term? Are you coming in as a freshman or a transfer? It has your intended major. Are you honors eligible? Community service. And then, have you had any discipline issues, high school issues, public, police issues? All of it gets listed on a cover sheet with your transcript, and it goes to someone in admissions that covers your sport. And generally, in 24 hours, you get a response. Now, let's interpret that. Number one, sometimes you get, this person is inadmissible with the grades they have now. Please keep in mind, the university is not saying you're denied, you haven't applied. They're saying from what we see right now, for 2 years of high school, 2.5 years of high school, this isn't gonna work. And then the college coach will almost every time say, sorry, listen, it's not gonna work here, we can't get you guaranteed with admission. I suggest you try these other schools that are kind of like us, but where I think you can get in. And then most kids will say, well, coach, how about if, in my next marking period, my grades go up, can I resubmit them to you? And most coaches will say the same thing, sure. However, by that time, I probably will found the player I'm looking for, okay? But it's pretty clear cut when admission says at this moment in time, you're not admissible. It generally ends the whole conversation. Coach is gonna get back to you and tell you, but it's gonna be pretty standard of what the next steps are. What a coach is hoping is that it says admissible, and it literally says that on the sheet. It does not mean you're admitted. You have not applied, nor have you completed high school. But it says at this moment in time, you're admissible, and then what also it will have is an academic grant associated with that. Admissible, $14,000 grant. Admissible, $7,000 grant. Admissible, $18,000 grant, which most of the time will be exactly right by the time you apply, unless your grades went way up and you got more money, unless your grades went down and you get less money. But what the college generally will do, the coaches typically do, especially for a scholarship athlete, is say, we submitted your transcript, they said you're admissible, You've got $14,000 in academic money, which is great. Our plan is to match that with athletic money, and that's $28,000 a year. That does not have to be paid back, and that's 45%. We'll give you till March 1 to decide if you want it. Everybody operates differently with the terminology and the deadlines and all that, and we will talk more about the scholarship piece. So that's typically how it happens, and it's going to happen generally in sometime in someone's junior year, as we talked about before. Now, there are, again, I said before, there are kids that are freshmen in high school that have 5-6 months of a high school transcript that have been verbally offered and committed to a school, but without barely any grades. So is that a done deal? No. The school can renege that offer, the player can renege that offer, the grades cannot go accordingly, and you don't get accepted. So a lot of those preliminary things, you hope they pan out, but the academics are the biggest piece. The coach says, yeah, we know you can play, but your academics, you have a lot of high school left to go through that. The one thing, and then we'll do questions on this if we need to, I don't usually cover this in person because it takes a little bit of time and it doesn't apply to that many people. So I'm just going to tell you what it is, and then someone could ask me after if they'd like. Is if you're looking at like an Ivy League or a NESCAC, the small Division III, little Ivies as they call them, they use a system called the Academic Index. And the Academic Index is basically a way that all the schools in that conference recruit in the same capacity, so that Columbia and Cornell are recruiting very similar profiles. And that 1 year Columbia doesn't go, you know what, we had a bad year last year, listen, you got a 2-3, come on in, let's start winning around here. So they've agreed, here's the system that's gonna happen. So if you're a high academic level student, you actually need to know this formula, and you can get information from your high school to calculate this formula. So when a coach says, do you know what your academic index is, you're able to speak that language, okay? All right, let's move to this now. This you may want to just note, your sport, Division I or II. So this is the women's NCAA sports. The column on the left is Division I, the column on the right is Division II. The men will be next, but I will pause here to explain what these numbers mean in terms of reality, right? And I always use basketball Division II because it's a nice round number of 10. So here's what that means. That means that Pace University, Division II, has 10 women's basketball scholarships. So if Pace costs $50,000 a year for tuition, room, board, and books, 50,000 times 10 is $500,000. That's the Pace scholarship budget. It's not each class of girls, it's the whole program at once. Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, fifth-year senior, graduate student. And the way most coaches operate, because it's not all that confusing, is say, all right, we have 2 girls graduating that are getting full scholarships, and then we have this one girl who said she wants to transfer. So that's 3 girls leaving the program. So that's $150,000 leaving. How much do we have to offer the new kids? $150,000. It could be high school girls coming in as freshmen. It could be transfers, whatever the combination is, okay? Now, I know there'll be some questions, but just let me cover a little bit more here. Number one is football and basketball only. You either get 0 scholarship dollars or the whole cost. So you get nothing, or you get tuition, room, board, and books. So when you watch Gonzaga play basketball and there's 16 people in the chairs, well, let's get to Gonzaga men here. You got 13 that are not paying a dime, and the other 3 probably still getting some form of financial aid, but not scholarship money, okay? The other sports can do partial amounts. So the other sport could give you $5,125 for tennis or golf or swim. They can do whatever they want based on what their needs are and what the amounts are. Now, this is where, and I went to the men, I can go back to the number for the women, this is where it gets confusing. You see, especially like 85, right? You see football at 85 scholarships, and that sounds like a huge amount, which it is compared to the other ones. But in essence, in reality, it's a salary cap. Because what would Georgia, coming off 2 national championships, how much money do they have to give out scholarships. They could have 700 kids on scholarship if they want, wrangle up all the best players and take them away from the other schools. So they're capped at 85 scholarships, and anyone else that's on the team is considered a recruited walk-on, meaning they were heavily recruited. The coach didn't have any scholarship money and they have a place on the team, which is different from a true walk-on who just shows up, sees, soccer tryouts and tries to make the team, which in 2023, Powerball would be easier to hit than they get a college roster as a straight-up walk-on. A lot of colleges do not have their NCAA allowed amount. Let me repeat that. A lot of colleges don't get to the number on the screen. Straight up, there's just not the budget. The university has a budget, the athletic department has a budget, each sport has a budget, and whether they don't sell revenue or it's tickets and have any revenue, whatever it is, they might have less than what's here. So here's an easy thing to kind of think about. How do you know if you're a scholarship player? You know you're a scholarship player when the coach is consistently recruiting you, constantly, okay? Ask for a transcript, and at some point is just gonna straight up say, we'd like to make you this offer. It's not gonna, you're not gonna have heard from a place at all, and they call up and say, we're gonna give you a scholarship. It's a process, it's just like a job interview. How do you know if you're gonna get hired for a job? You have an interview. They call you back. They ask for references. You have another interview, and then they call and say, "We loved you. We want to, offer you the job, and here's what it pays." And a scholarship is negotiable, just like a job offer is. Right? You could say, "Hey, this is great. I love the school, but I've got 3 offers, and yours is the lowest, but you're my top choice. Can you match? Can you?" And there's plenty of ways to negotiate. Okay. Do it the right way, etc. But it's not the final number necessarily when you get offered a scholarship. But that's a lot of time I've talked without doing any questions. Yes? That's a really, really, really good question. Do you mention the names of the other schools? It's funny. Coaches handle that differently in this regard. A lot of coaches I know, when they're first recruiting kids, they're asking, where else are you looking? And they're almost doing a little intel. Sometimes they're fact checking. They're going, gee, am I seeing the right thing by hearing at the other schools that this person's looking? Like, in other words, if I say to you, hey, where else are you looking? And you say, no, you're the only school that I'm talking to. I'd be like, do I? But if you said, listen, yeah, I got this and that and this and that, I'd be like, oh, wow, okay. So would I do that? Would I say to the coach, I've got these other schools that I would probably not say that, me personally, this doesn't mean it's right. I would probably not say the names of the schools unless they say, hey, can you send us one of your competing offers that we can look at and send to financial aid, in which case you're going to have to scan it and send to them and show them that Drexel gave you 35 grand when they only gave you 18 grand. So at some point you might have to do that. That's a good question. Okay, you're asking a great question. Do coaches get turned off by trying to negotiate a scholarship? If you do it the wrong way, yes. If you do it the right way, in the right way being, oh my God, college is crazy expensive and overpriced. We're stressed out to trying to afford this. Is there any way you can help us get 2 more grand a year? It would be a huge difference. They like that. They know that, right? But if you're like, well, you didn't make me any, this school wants me, well, you better do the same. You're like, get out of here. I've told kids, I've had a couple of those conversations in my life. Kids doing that, I just say, take the other offer. Good luck. It's just not worth it, because that's a headache now. It's going to be a 4-year headache. It's not worth it. But again, coming from that angle of like, we love the school, but we have these other schools that we don't like as much, but boy, they really made us a great offer. Can you do something? I think that's totally fine and appropriate. Was there a question? Oh, let me go here. Yes. The coach does. Yes. So he said, who fills out that pre-read sheet? The coach does. So generally you get a transcript. The coach has almost all the information, but sometimes we'll say to you, hey, is there anything I need to know? Good or bad, community service, discipline at school, you were suspended. It's before they go ahead and submit that. Yeah. Was there another question? I think yes. Yes, you, yes. Okay. Division III can give you great financial aid, academic. It's not allowed to be a line item on the financial aid package that says lacrosse, $10,000 in Division III. No. And in fact, this is a good time. I generally assume people know this, but it's probably incorrect. Really what the differences are between Division I and II and III is not only is it scholarships, but it's also the amount of games you play, the amount of practice hours, and season length. So this is the way I generally view it. I'm probably off a little bit here. But for a Division I athlete, for 100% of your time in college, 70% will be spent athletically. 25% academically, 5% socially. If you're at a Division III school, you're looking at a third of your time is spent probably athletically, and then the other 66 academic and social. So that's the premise of Division III, is it's not supposed to be overtaking your life like it would in another, at a Division I level. Any other questions before I go? Keep going? Yes.
You mentioned about video, and guys go to Twitter. Is there a preferred platform that you're saving your information and videos on?
Okay, great question. He asked about videos and, is there a preferred platform to accumulate video, share video? Right now, Twitter, YouTube. Because I think a coach would rather get a text from a kid, say, hey, coach, I put all my videos, and the coach could just click on YouTube and not have to, go and log into some recruiting company. Or a lot of times they'll follow you on social media, and then when you post a new video, now they'll get access to look at it. Now, I really could there's a lot of side talks I could do that. Number one, the transfer portal could be its own talk because there's so much involved in it. The other really is the social media stuff. I think kids probably get a little unfairly excited when someone follows them. Because I think a lot of, there's a new generation of coaching. Like right here, I'm going to put coach on the spot. He's the new generation. You got social media?
Yeah.
Of course he does, right? You got a 63-year-old coach at, Texas. You think he's hanging out on Twitter and Instagram all the time? Probably not, right? So typically, younger coaches in college will follow gazillions of guys. So and girls. So let's say this. Let's stick with lacrosse. Let's say Fairfield University's typical incoming class is 15 players. So in 2024, let's say they're bringing 15 new recruits. Let's go 13 high school kids and 2 transfers, because that's probably more reality. Out of the 13 high school kids in the class of 24, they're probably following 1,000 on Twitter. So point is, it's easy to just go click and then just look. And the kid's going, oh my God, I got followed by this. It's better than not getting followed, but it's not like, well, you can just wrap up the whole process, post some more videos, and the whole thing is going to be done. Yes? Okay. This is the easiest thing I will say about video. In a perfect world, it's either highlights or quick practice things where in 2 or 3 minutes the coach can go, holy cow, this person is pretty good. And then if they decide, it depends by the sport, that they want more video, they'll ask for it. So if you play ice hockey and you send 2 minutes of unbelievable goals, they're going to know, holy cow, this kid's really good, but could you send us a full game? Because we know you don't make plays like this all the time. If you get asked for more video, you're on your way to a pretty good recruiting process. You should be thrilled if you get asked for more video. But I think most kids overdo it and try to make this most perfect thing, and they have music and it fades in with smoke and Metallica. And the more production values, generally, the less talented you are. That's kind of been proven over time. So just get something simple, literally film it off a phone. Unless, depending on the sport, I don't know if you film lacrosse games. Yeah, so if the team films the sport and a kid can get access to it and get some clips, that's great. So it doesn't have to be mom or dad or whatever the case is. All right, let me go on to, we'll have one slide left and then done, and we've done a lot of questions, but if there's any more, I'll put this all up here too. So I found 2 times of severe stress for recruits. One is no one's calling. Nothing's happening. Friends are committing. This is going, holy cow, am I going to play? Got nothing going on. It's very stressful. And the other time is you got 3 schools you equally like that have put a deadline on you, and you don't know what to do, right? So my advice here would be A, B, or C, or really do what's at the bottom. All things being equal, I'd go to the better academic school or the school that's better for my major. That would be one thing that would put me over the edge of the particular school. Or I would go to the school that is either cheaper or giving me more financial aid. The more financial aid they give you, the more invested they are in you. So I would consider that as an option, again, when you're equal. Number 3, or C, I would go where all things being equal, the coach and you seem to have a connection. The coach seems genuinely, truly interested and is going to be your advocate for 4 years, as opposed to you don't play well as a freshman and then you're just done for your career. The coach really shows interest, or the one that seems to be really, interested in recruiting you the most. The reality is you should make a visit and truly try to have at least a day in the life of a student there. Go to class, go to the cafeteria, go see the dorms, go watch a practice or a game, have dinner with kids in the team, go to an event if there's something going on, and do that. And generally when you do that, it gets much easier and you make a decision, a gut decision. And if you remember at the start of this talk, I said you should be hitting schools quickly. You should be driving to go see an aunt, go look at PACE for 5 minutes and decide if it should stay on your list. But now you're down to the end and PACE is one of the 3 schools or 4 schools or whatever. The coach should be asking you, but if not, I certainly would say, hey, can I come up for a day and really, see what the school is like? Highly encourage that, because if you don't, and you then get to school and it's not what you thought it was, then you want to transfer, and it stinks for you, and it stinks for the team, and it stinks for the coaches. And honestly, the people I feel worst for are the other 6 girls that were in line behind you, but you said yes, so they had to go elsewhere. And then 1 month in, you want to leave, and I can't get any of those 6 now. So coaches should want to open the door to make sure you're in the right place for you and that it's a good fit all the way around. All right, I swear on my life, last slide right here. PowerPoint, that's the number for anyone that came in late, the 678 number. This Zoom thing, don't worry about that now. If you get the PowerPoint sent to you, you can click that. I just give you, if you want to talk one-on-one, we're certainly happy to do that. My cell phone, email, that's it, really. So again, really when I say feel free to reach out at any time, not a day goes by that I do a lot of these talks that someone doesn't contact me and say, I came to your talk a year ago, I heard it all, but now a coach is doing this, and what does it mean? And do you have any advice or anything like that? So happy to do that. But any additional questions? There's got to be a couple. Yes. Yeah.
So we kind of reached out to the coach himself and sent his time cross country.
Yes.
He chose not to go, but we did get to tour the campus and stuff, but not that I know all that. Can you just explain, clarify, because I had friends that they go, their kids are making this and this. Clarify for Vision 3 that it's a financial aid, it's not a scholarship per se, because I have some friends thinking that my kids is like Vision 3 and they're going to get scholarships, but it goes under something else, and it's no financial aid. That's where confusion is.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, what she was saying is, people are under the assumption, even if you go Division 3, the coach is going to have a way to finagle getting you a whole, what in essence is a scholarship. No, if the coach is going to have any pull to help you in any way, it's going to be with admissions. So for example, you're borderline to get into Tufts, an unbelievable college, right? The coach is going to use what pull they have to get you in the door. The financial aid is generally straight up. It's not like they go, hey, listen, we got to get this kid, give us 12 more grand. It just doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Right. Yeah. Again, the reason I've been at Sachem 18 times is to try to teach people about this process, because I think what generally people think, they have enough information to be dangerous, you know? Sure, of course, absolutely.
My son did reach out to the young person who would think, is that negative for any of these potential college athletes, like email the coach and say, hey, we're interested in this, that, whatever, or is that too far?
No, so, yeah. So start with this, and it's totally different. So you said, is it, you know, talking about one of our sons with cross country or track, was it right? You can get recruited in cross country or track by an email. You could put in the subject box information, it's going to get opened. Let's take basketball. If you send a basketball email to a normal legit program to Fordham, they'll never answer. Never answer. Okay? And then here's another thing, this didn't come up. Oh, I filled out their recruiting questionnaire. I went online and filled out their recruiting questionnaire. Not one college coach ever sees or looks at a recruiting questionnaire ever. You know what a recruiting questionnaire is for? Admissions, to get your name and email and start mailing stuff to your house, to get you to apply, to get the numbers of applications to go up, to get it harder to get into so they can get a raise. That's it. So it's not like a coach, you know, gets in the morning, fires up the computer and goes, yes, recruiting is over, baby. Got that questionnaire in, we're all going to the beach, let's go to happy hour, recruiting's done. Recruiting is torturous work that never, ever ends. And in fact, love this. And again, there's such a difference between the haves and have-nots in all the sports and the levels. I live in Connecticut now. I have friends that are at this particular school. 5 days after the national championship, Kirby Smart, the coach at Georgia, his helicopter lands at all the different prep schools in Connecticut where he's talking to recruits. Helicopter. Just the gas in the helicopter was my entire recruiting budget when I was at Sacred Heart. Like, fill up that, what does it cost to fill up a helicopter for a trip? I don't know, does anyone have any idea? That would be good. $5,000? There you go, recruiting's done. Right? Where meanwhile, Texas football brought Arch Manning in and 7 other kids, they stayed in the Ritz-Carlton, and their budget for that, the cost for that trip was $280,000 to recruit 8 kids on a weekend. So you're talking about that budget is more than the entire budget of every sport at Hofstra. Guaranteed. So people do think the Power 5 schools will break away from the NCAA and be their own version because it's so far removed from what most colleges are dealing with. Anyone else? Anyone at home? No, we're not going to do that. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming out on a cold Saturday. I'll stick around if you have any questions. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.